and I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, and everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
And welcome to the Chefs and Pucks podcast. I'm joined by Chris today. Chris, how you doing?
I'm back after a decently long absence due to my work obligations and crappy Wi-Fi. But yeah, I'm glad to be back. And wow, have the Canucks had quite #the start.
Yeah, we haven't had you on since have you been on since the beginning of the season?
I think a couple games in where we were like, oh, this is a surprise. But once it actually became a sustained thing, it was just like okay, clearly we're playing above our weight class. When is this regression coming? When is the floor going to just disappear out from beneath us? I guess you can say that kind of happened in Toronto, but I think we'll probably get into that.
Yeah. So the Canucks have just finished their 3-game road trip through Eastern Canada. Games against the Ottawa Senators, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Montreal Canadiens. What did you think of those 3 games there, Chris? Because it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Even though they got 2 wins, it felt like a mixed bag in terms of how it went.
Yeah, and I guess full transparency here, I mostly caught highlights of the games as opposed to watching it live, just due to my work environment and the fact that I was in a remote place with not very great Wi-Fi and all that jazz. So from what I've seen from the highlight reels and from scrolling on Twitter and whatnot, I would say that, yeah, like I was talking about earlier, we were playing above our weight class, having crazy shooting percentages, our star players just playing out of their minds most nights. And somehow, even when the PDs, the Hugheses, the Demkos were not having great nights, they were still getting bottom 6 and depth defenseman contributions to help out in that absence. But after that Toronto game, or I guess you could say the Toronto game was the first loss, but there had been some questionable performances kind of leading up to that as well. So you kind of knew that it was coming, and as long as it was a slight dip or I believe the term that I've heard used around was soft landing, as long as it's, a smoother transition as opposed to just the floor disappearing from beneath the Canucks, I think most Canuck fans would be pretty pleased with how the season has started so far, and especially in comparison to those Oilers. My God.
And then we'll get into that as well later on. But yes, excuse me. The way the Canucks sort of played that through that road trip, it was, they weren't controlling the game like you want. They felt a little scrambly in Ottawa, but they found their game. They found the game late, and they just everything seems to be going right for the Canucks when they get the opportunities right now. And then in Toronto, they got some power plays. They got power play goals. Sheldon Keefe is still complaining about a clean hit. I don't understand why, but come on, buddy. This is hockey. And yeah, but the Leafs were able to control the game more. So they were, and with their firepower, they were able to win that game. And then Montreal, It still felt a little scrambly, but closer to the process that we want to see. So yeah, that's going 2-1 along that road trip. Yeah, you didn't get the win against Toronto, which always feels good when they can get that, especially when you've got media out there who don't watch many Canucks games because it's past their bedtime. Either that or they're just too neck deep in some sort of spreadsheet that who knows. So
look at you, Dom Lecision.
But yeah, I think it's what I find interesting is the Canucks are still finding ways to win. I don't even think Petey's playing at his best level yet, which is kind of.
Have the rumors that I've been reading where people are suspecting that he's actually masking some sort of injury right now, or that he's not playing at 100%? Would you agree with that?
I don't think he's playing at 100%. But I don't think it's like anything major. It's just something probably just like one of those underlying nagging ones that you just have to play through until it gets better.
Like a decent bruise or something that's,
something like that. Yeah.
That isn't actually like I have to sit out a game.
Yeah, exactly. But it's looking if Petey can take it to another level this season, considering how many points he has.
Yeah, I was going to say, are we talking about another level when he's already at least top 5, if not top 3 in scoring in the league for so far this season? Like, if we're hoping for another tier above that, what are we actually expecting?
Well, just what's made the Canucks work is he's top 1 there, Chris, in points going into tonight.
Yeah, I knew he was up there. I hadn't. Just with how crazy work has been, I haven't had a chance to really pay that super close attention to the details and whatnot. So I haven't been refreshing my NHL stats page recently.
The Canucks' best players have been at a level that's basically allowed them to drag them through what may not be a perfect start in terms of the underlying numbers. So
you could argue that they're getting all the puck luck that they've been missing desperately the past 2 to 3 seasons.
Yeah, but also I think you're also, from my perspective, you're also seeing them work through and finding a process and a defensive system that works.
Mm-hmm.
They may be giving up more shots. They may be giving up more quote unquote expected goals, but a lot of those, like the expected goals, is just an accumulation of, and it is a counting stat. It's an accumulation stat, and a lot of that is just their low percentage shots and the chances that the Canucks are giving up, but they're giving up a decent amount of them. So it's not like they're giving up 5-alarm opportunities like, say, the Oilers are right now. So I think for that 3-game road trip, going 2-1, I think is more than fair and good. The Canucks haven't had they lost in Montreal after losing to Toronto, then you start wondering, is this the cliff that they're going to fall off of? But the fact that they came back, got the win in Montreal, and started to find their game again after being scrambly in Ottawa, finding a way to win, and then being still not at the top of the game in the Toronto game, that's good. That's very, 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 very good for Canucks fans if you're hoping for this to be more than just a very hot start.
Yeah, and even thanks to the hot start, they've been able to pad their place in the standings, and due to that, I think I heard on a podcast episode I recently listened to where they said the Canucks barely have to play 500 hockey the rest of the season to basically coast into a playoff spot.
Yeah,
So
they've
the fact
given
that-
themselves that cushion instead of chasing it that they have for the past 2-3 years. They have the cushion.
Yeah, so to steal a Boudreauxism, if they just win the week each week, it's a cakewalk. Well, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but it'll be relatively easy in comparison to the past couple seasons.
And there will be weeks that they don't win. There will be down games where they don't have good games.
Dare I say it, a 3-game losing streak?
But the fact that they've given themselves this much of a cushion is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So with next weekend being American Thanksgiving, that's usually the point where you start seeing who's for real and who isn't. And the Canucks have only a few games till then. They'll be right in there. So, but one big issue going into that will be the fact that Carson Soucy is injured again. The Canucks waived Jack Studnicka, sent him back down to Abbotsford in order to call up Akito Hirose to replace Carson Soucy in the roster. The Canucks are going to miss Soucy and his
size,
his wingspan, his physicality. That's not Akito Hirose's game.
You could almost argue that they're completely opposite style of defensemen.
Mm-hmm. So I'll be very interested to see how they build that blue line with Hirose. He's played a couple games with the Canucks, but how they build that blue line going forwards, and especially depending on the opponents that they have, because they've got the Islanders tomorrow, and we'll get into the return of Bo Horvat in a bit. They've got the Flames on Thursday, so you've got back-to-back games coming up here, and the Flames are starting. It feels like the Flames are starting to find a little bit of an identity
under Huska
with some strong play from the kids, Connor Zary and Martin Pospisil.
Look what happens when you actually play the kids, Daryl.
And then, but also with losing Soucy to injury, the Canucks have also gotten Teddy Bluger back, who missed the start of the season with a bruise of some sort, I believe is what it was.
That must have been quite the bruise, because he was out, a month?
Yeah, I think it was the deep bone bruise or something like that in the leg. So a lot of swelling that may not have been able to get the equipment on properly. Mm-hmm. But that he adds some strengths to the penalty kill as well as the bottom six. We saw him slide in on Sunday versus the Habs, and Niels Höglander coming out. And I don't expect Höglander to be out too long. I think they're with this coaching staff, and they benched JT Miller. There's going to be accountability, so you have to keep playing hard. And I think there's I wouldn't be surprised if we see someone like an Anthony Beauvillier maybe sit here soon if he doesn't pick it up.
Just due to his contract, maybe a Dakota Joshua, if they want to get Niels back in for a specific game.
Joshua is interesting because I think Tocchet likes him, likes his size. When he's engaged, he's got the physicality. Like he was the one who knocked David Kampf out with that. Well, not out, but massive hit in that Toronto game that Sheldon Keefe is still complaining about. Come on, bud. So when he's on, he's got that physicality, that size and strength that Tocchet wants, especially from board battles. But Höglander has really shown the tenacity that we've been wanting to see from him. Like I remember watching him play some of the highlights in the Swedish league where he showed that nastiness. You're starting to see that. You're starting to see him develop into a bit of a pest, a bit of a rat, which the Canucks need. But he still has to find his way. I didn't expect him to become a a game in, game out player just yet. He's still developing, so I'm not worried, but I still would like to see him get back in pretty quickly here, and I wouldn't be surprised if he plays one of the back-to-back games, because it is a back-to-backs it's a travel back-to-back as well, because the Canucks are hosting the Islanders tomorrow night, and then they're in Calgary on Thursday.
Speaking of which, are you going to the said game?
I will not be. Weekday game, unfortunately, but yeah, we are we are going to try and go to the Saturday night game on the, I believe it's the 2nd, and the Canucks are in town again. So as well, that's gonna be a fun week or so of hockey, because we've got the Abbotsford's in town next weekend on American Thanksgiving weekend, and then you've got the Canucks and Flames on the 2nd on the Saturday, and then the Sunday's the Calgary Hitmen's Teddy Bear Toss game, and we've got tickets to that. So looking forward to seeing as much hockey as possible in that week. So
fair enough. Yeah, don't blame you there. If I was still in Calgary, I'd join you on that weekend.
Yeah. Before we get into the return of Bo Horvat, is there anything else that we haven't touched on with the Canucks, just at least right now?
I mean, nothing that really immediately jumps to the front of mind, so we can continue on.
All right, yeah. So tomorrow we've got the return of the captain, the old captain of the Vancouver Canucks, and Bo Horvat. First time back in Vancouver since the trade last, was it February? Something like that. It was like right around the it was right before the All-Star break. So yeah, I would say late January, early February.
Yeah, so
do you think he gets booed?
I don't think it'll be like a soundly booed by the crowd, kind of in like a DeBrincat sort of style. I think there's going to be enough people there that you'll hear some jeers, I think, but I don't think it's going to be overwhelming. I'm pretty sure that there's enough people that have at least a healthy respect for Horvat and what he brought, that, and not only that, but the fact that he basically had to reside over a pretty shitty team in a pretty dark era of the Canucks, at least in recent memory. So I think he deserves some credit given that context. And yeah, I think there will be more cheers and boos, but I don't think it'll be like 100% either way.
And then you throw in that walk-off interview we had last year.
If the marketing team doesn't take advantage of, I'll tell you that for free, they have failed.
I think had he not made those comments, there wouldn't be this conversation.
Oh, for sure. Because I think the
did.
reason why there might be boos happening is because even though Bo has been doing his media tour recently and basically explicitly saying, hey, that wasn't at the fans, that was more so like whether it was media or management or what have you, he wants the fans to know that it wasn't about them, it wasn't about the city, that he enjoyed his time there, he loves the city, and all that jazz. So yeah, I think he's doing his best to wash his hands before he comes back home.
Yeah, he's definitely trying his best, but we all. I think what will happen is I think you'll hear a smattering of boos sort of in warm up and all that.
Or maybe the first time he touches the puck, but I think when they give him what we all know will be a tribute video during a TV timeout or an intermission or what have you, there will be a standing O, and he'll give his, hand raise clap or whatever to the crowd.
Yeah, I think it'll be really, but as soon as he touches the puck, just as Yannick Hansen wants us to do, I think there'll definitely be a significant amount of boos, which I mean, it's sports. It's fucking
If you're
sports.
not being petty and competitive, what are you doing?
Exactly. But yeah, Yannick Hansen went on the People's Show on 650 this afternoon, and said that it was what he said there was a slap in the face to the Canucks fan base, and then you boo him when he touches the puck. So
I do have to admit that I really like Yannick's frankness in his post player career. He doesn't beat around the bush. He tends to actually say stuff quite bluntly, which I very much appreciate as a person of German heritage.
He's still living up to the Honey Badger moniker. That's for sure. But yeah, with Bo Horvat, I think you touched on it a little bit there, Chris. Him being the captain for the majority of such a dark time for the franchise, with just the lack of any sort of playoff success outside of the bubble. He was sort of just almost the face of the franchise during the Benning era.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's contextualize it this way. He basically was the captain of the Benning era.
Yeah. Let's take those comments away. He was a perfectly fine captain. He was a perfectly fine forward and top 6 forward, number 2 center with the Canucks. He wasn't good enough to be a number 1 center. The idea that he was like, there's people out there, fans out there who just seem to have it in for him and would basically call him a glorified third-line center. Flat out wrong. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. You're just flat out wrong. And but it just happened. He just happened to be the captain during an era where the management just could not put a team together around him where they were able to have the success that you want as a fan, the media wants, and the franchise frankly wanted.
And I would probably argue that out of especially during the Benning era, Canuck fans were clamoring of sell high on this player so that way we actually can get value, because we were stuck with so many contracts that turned sour on the Canucks that we basically were stuck with problem players because we couldn't move them due to their contracts. So the fact that we were basically able to capitalize on Horvat on a career scoring season for him, and then for the Islanders to get him and then to sign him for that contract that he wanted out of Vancouver at 8.5, let's see how that ages on the island and see if Lou ends up regretting that one.
Yeah, and we could go off onto a tangent about the Islanders, how just how he goes. Bo Horvat goes from Vancouver with the Benning era, where there's so many players that were signed to contracts that
airs on over bloated contracts.
Oh yeah, and then you just go look at the contracts that Lou Lamoriello has signed with the Islanders. There is just an amazing amount of older players getting paid, and they've got Noah Dobson, who's a stud defenseman. They've got Ryan Pulock and Pelech that are they're good, solid defensemen. But everyone is on sort of the back end of their prime or past it with the Islanders right now.
I would argue, roster-wise, the Islanders and the Flames are kind of in a very similar sort of places where they probably would like to do a tear down / rebuild if they could get away with it. But realistically, they're kind of stuck in the situation that they are and are doing their best to basically manage that at this point.
When you've got Casey Cizikas at 32 signed to a 4-year deal. So 3 years after this at $2.5 million. Oof. You've got
And wasn't
John
it him
Gabriel
that had that really good headline of about the fans should just stay at home if they're going to be that way?
Yeah, Cizikas came out with that one. They signed Scott Mayfield at 31 to a 7-year deal.
Yeesh.
At $3.5 million. I don't know what Lou's thinking. Like Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock, good solid defensemen, but they're 29 years old and they're signed for they're on 7-year deals as well. You've got everyone's like you've got Anderson, he's the captain, 33 years old. He's got 2 more years at $7 million after this season. Like it's just like everyone outside of Noah Dobson, everyone who's a key player is on the back end of their prime or past it. Like
basically
even Ilya Sorokin,
Millers.
even Ilya Sorokin, who is a absolute stud goalie, he's 28. Where the hell did that go? Mm-hmm. And starting next year, he's going to be making $8.25 million. He's going to have an $8.25 million cap hit. Yeah.
Like you said, we can go out on a tangent, but we really probably shouldn't.
Kind of already did, but
let's steer ourselves out of that ditch.
So yeah, you've got the return of Bo Horvat tomorrow. I hope that he does get the standing ovation he deserves. At when they do the tribute video, and I fully expect it, but I also fully expect him to get boos when he touches the puck and all that. And if you want to go and do that, be my guest. It is, as we said earlier, it's sports. If you aren't being petty and competitive in some aspect, I mean,
you're doing sports wrong. Yeah.
And then we got the Flames and Canucks on Thursday, where Heidi was already telling me how she's looking forward to hearing me yell and scream and call the Flames bad names. It's gonna happen.
Sean, yell at the TV while watching hockey? Never.
But other than that, I know it feels weird. Like just everything's feeling good with the Canucks. Like it's like, what did we even talk about? Like before
Somebody pinched me. This is a dream.
We could ramble on for an hour on what was wrong with the Canucks. Like it feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah. You almost feel like you need to take out that clip in the intro about it being a beer league team.
Oh, that was not fun. That was not fun times.
Yeah.
But speaking of beer league team, the Oilers have played like one for
what a transition. Love it.
And because of that, they fired Jay Woodcroft on Sunday and have hired Chris Knobloch, former junior coach of Connor McDavid. What did you think of that there, Chris?
I mean, the Oilers, like, if you have a generational talent and you are on one hell of a swirl around the bottom of the toilet bowl and you are getting desperate, yeah, you're probably going to find as many connections back to that generational talent's youth and prior success that you can find. So yeah, am I surprised that his former agent is now the CEO and is basically calling the shots over Holland and hiring his former minor league or junior coach? Like, yeah, I'm not exactly surprised by that. That being said, do I think that Jay Woodcroft deserved his fate? Ultimately, probably not. Like, he had quite a good winning record with that team. It's just that he had a horrible losing streak at probably the worst possible time. And in this day and age of modern sports, if not specifically just hockey, like, head coaches are fired like they're a dime a dozen. They are the thing that you do first when things go wrong. So, yeah, I do actually kind of feel bad for Jay Woodcroft to a certain degree, but yeah, we'll see what Knobloch can do and potentially turn this team around.
Yeah, I think the narrative that came pretty quickly out of that, because of the fact that Jeff Jackson is the Connor McDavid's former agent, is the CEO of the Oilers, and now that they brought in Connor Brown in the offseason, who was who rode shotgun with Connor McDavid with the Erie Otters in junior. And now you're bringing in the former coach. The narrative that quickly became that Connor's calling the shots, I think, is a little bit. I think is a little bit tinfoil-y for me. I think you have to. I think if you've got someone like Connor McDavid, you do want to try and keep him as happy as possible. But I don't think he's pulling the strings here, and I think Jeff Jackson has been someone who has been very vocal about it. Has had very vocal support of Chris Knobloch in the past. So I think this is some of this, and I think some of this is now the Oilers turning, skewing away from being the Ken Holland team to a Jeff Jackson team.
Yeah, and when I was talking about that earlier, I meant more in the sense that, like, Ken Holland was like, yeah, like, you know, we talked to the leadership group or what have you, and then next question, Jeff Jackson's like, yep, we didn't consult them at all.
Yeah, it was. I think part of that is, I think they probably had conversations with the agents and the players leading up to the dismissal of Jay Woodcroft. But I don't think that there was much in the way of discussion with them about who they were bringing in.
Yeah,
or whether or not they should be bringing in Chris Knobloch. But yeah, I think the underreported part of this is the fact that this is a trend. Ken Holland's in the last year of his contract. I don't think he's going to be brought back as the GM. I think this is going to be transitioned into the Jeff Jackson show with the Oilers.
Do you think he would like have a multiple role where he's the CEO and general manager, sort of like almost kind of like a old school Pat Quinn?
No, I don't think he'll be like the president of hockey ops and GM. I think what he will bring in his own person to take over that role. But I do think that his fingerprints will be all over it going forward, all over the organization going forwards.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, you've got the Oilers' first game under Chris Knobloch. Less than a minute in, they get scored off.
Definitely was a "oh no, not again" sort of moment for Oilers fans. But
they were able to pull it out, though. Yeah, they were able to pull it out and win 4-1. But yeah, that was not the start that they wanted.
I can envision in my head Graham Moseman's reaction to that goal.
But yeah, one of the big things too is you've got Leon Draisaitl's only got 1 year left after this season on his contract, and Connor McDavid has 2. So it just, unfortunately for Jay Woodcroft, his worst stretch as the coach came at the absolutely worst time. They didn't have a cushion. Like say they got off to they're outside of the Canucks games, they were good this season. And they were right in there with the Kings, the Canucks, and the Golden Knights for the division. And then they have they fall off in, say, December and January. I don't think Jay Woodcroft loses his job because I think they'd still be in it. But now the math is against them. Now they have to play at a better pace for the rest of the season than they did last year. To give them a shot to make
basically have switched spots in the standings.
They really have.
They were the relatively dominant team in the regular season, whereas the Canucks would shoot themselves in the foot out the gate and then had to play catch up all season. So now the shoe's on the other foot, and that's why Canuck fans are still in disbelief of like, I know this team probably isn't this good, but how are we doing this good?
Yeah. So we'll see what happens here with the Oilers going forwards. Today in Toronto, the GMs met to discuss a few things, including cut resistant gear, which I think definitely after what happened with Adam Johnson, as well as Jordan Eberle got cut about a week later, I think. And just, we aren't going to get into it, but because I think it's far beyond what we do here, but I think it is worth mentioning that there was a person arrested in relation to that Adam Johnson incident for under suspicion of manslaughter. I think we can make we can connect the dots there, and it is it is Matt Petgrave, but that is also more of a legal thing where there's a lot more going on. So I think I want to just mention
the legal
that
system going through its regular beats. When someone dies, and the law has to come into play in a certain respect. So I think this is just kind of the legality of it kind of playing itself out. I don't think
it's also happening in the UK, where the system's a little bit different from what we're used to in Canada and the States. So we'll let that play out. I
also just want to quickly mention the fact that it's manslaughter, not murder.
Yeah, but we'll let that play out, and then when more things, there's a better way. It feels weird to talk about it right now when it's all still ongoing and all that. So I just wanted to.
I do want to talk about the fact that, like, I do think that because it seems like most of the resistance is actually coming, like, even though some players are like willingly, throwing on net guards and stuff, even when it's not mandatory at the NHL level, I feel most of the pushback is from like the players and the players union level as far as mandating extra safety equipment. But when it's coming to whether it's shot blockers, whether it's neck protectors, or even just having more cut resistant like underlayers and stuff like that, I think that stuff like that there should be a little bit more consideration on a league-wide sort of mandate in the same way that like visors happened. Like
helmets, visors, I think we will be seeing some more
where if you historically never did and you still don't want to, like, you might have the option, but if you come into the league at a certain point, it's mandatory. I think that
I think we are going to get to that point here quickly. I think we will see things being grandfathered in, where if you going forwards, players coming in will have to wear neck guards for sure. The cut resistant. What I also want to see is the manufacturers start working with the players, trying to figure out how to make it protect them while not being
hindrance.
A hindrance, even though it's not really a hindrance. Like as much as it yeah.
It's just new and different, and hockey players especially are very habit and ritual and almost what's the word I'm looking for? Why is it escaping me? Superstitious. There we go. So yeah, hockey players are just very kind of in their own routine and like what they're used to. So to actually try and introduce something different, you're going to run into a fair amount of resistance, and I feel like that's all that this is.
Yeah, and I do think that we will be going towards at least net guards for sure being grandfathered in, which really should be happening as soon as possible. I hope, because we do not like there's certain risks that you take stepping onto the ice to play hockey. Losing your life is very low on that, and it should stay low. And we should be doing anything we can to keep it as low as possible.
Mm-hmm. But there was another thing that that got talked about at that meeting that I think you and I both are equally passionate about, and I think we should get onto that now.
Yes, there's going to be they discussed some potential changes to the 3-on-3 overtime to try and mitigate the amount of regrouping that you see. If the play isn't there, you see teams back out from the zone, and to try and create more space and more speed. I don't understand why they're trying to do this. Outside of like the extreme times where you just see teams circling back and skating through and not doing anything. When it's 3-on-3, all it takes is them to take one shot and one errant pass, and the other team's going the other way. Usually,
and that's what makes 3-on-3 so damn exciting is that unpredictability and oh shit, it went the way you didn't expect it to sort of situation.
Exactly, and I really hope that they don't screw this up, because the only thing that they need to change about overtime is extend it to 10 minutes to try and get rid of as many shootouts as possible.
Hell, I will go even more extreme than you, Sean, which is saying something. And they should actually just have continuous 3-on-3 overtime until someone scores, because let's be honest, unlike 5-on-5, scoring at 3-on-3 with that amount of open ice, it's inevitable. You're not going to have a 6 overtime never-ending game of 3-on-3. And it's exciting, the fans love it, and we're sick of the shootout at this point. The shootout to modern-day hockey is what the tie and kissing your sibling was like in the 90s.
Honestly, I understand the NHL wanted to have like a set end. So I think just have it like, I don't mind if you go through 10 minutes of 3-on-3 and you haven't scored. I think the amount of shootouts that we'll see will be like, I don't see that happening very often. Yeah, greatly diminished. So
I have to take a rare hot take because I'm not known for them.
But the other thing is just how do you officiate this? Like, to cut back on that, are you going to end up like finding a way? Are you going to end up just creating more whistles and making it less fluid? No one wants to see that.
Don't mess up with what's exciting.
Some sort of weird ass pond hockey. Oh, we have to give the puck back and keep the clock running. No one wants to see that.
We don't need shot clocks.
No, just. I feel like they've completely just looked at this the wrong way, because I think it's just I don't see the appeal of forcing the teams to just stay within, say, once they cross the blue line, they can't go past. Like, the only way I can see it happen is that would make okay sense is if once you pass the blue line, you can't cross the red line again. But again, how do you officiate that? Are you
gonna make for weird, awkward, like almost unenforceable, or at least like controversial sort of plays, which is going to cause more people complaining than it solves problems.
Yeah, I feel like the regrouping, while it can get tedious at times when it gets too much, actually does open up more actual offense than forcing them to play in a smaller space.
And it's not like this happens over and over and over and over to the point where it just ends up being a stalemate. After like 3 resets, something happens where they break through and something dramatic happens. So. And
you get one mistake and it's the other way, right? So
yeah, exactly.
When you're artificially creating a smaller space for them to work within, you're not going to get that. You're going to remove those more odd man rushes than you're going to create with that.
You're going to make it more similar to 5-on-5, which defeats the purpose of it being 3-on-3.
Yeah. So I really, really hope that they don't screw with this, because like 3-on-3 right now is great, and I don't think it needs to be changed. It's because like 1 out of every 10 overtimes is a little bit quote unquote boring. Doesn't mean that you need to change it.
Agreed.
All right, and then this week we've got the NHL going to Sweden for NHL regular season games. They've got Detroit facing off against Ottawa on Thursday at noon Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific. You've got on Friday at the same time, noon Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, Toronto and Detroit playing. And then you've got on Saturday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Mountain, you've got Minnesota and Ottawa. And then you've also got on Sunday at 6 a.m. Mountain, 5 a.m. Pacific, you've got Toronto and Minnesota.
So, as ridiculous as as eye-rolly as that might be for us West Coasters, I think that would work better next season. Do like the Frozen Frenzy thing again, but then also time it where you have games in Europe, so that way you have a full-day hockey marathon.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Yes, there you go, Chris. That's a great idea. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Next time they do a Frozen Frenzy, or just like full, just have it while that. Yes. Wake up. Have your do it on a Saturday. Wake up, have your coffee, throw the little Baileys into it. Start watching hockey at 8 a.m. and then you can
wait into the first game, then crack that first beer with brunch.
No, that might be your best idea you've had on this podcast, Chris. Have it Frozen Frenzy. Start off with a game in Europe at 8 a.m. and just go from there. Because we've definitely seen. By that time that's done, you have that one, and then you can have a game start at Yeah,
there's some promise with the Frozen Frenzy, and the first year you're obviously going to be working out some kinks and whatnot. I think the concept it's a novel idea. They just need to tweak it to make it better, and I feel like that's one of those things that will make that better.
And I don't think you were on when we discussed it, because I think we talked about that having it on a Saturday having it so that the games do go throughout most of the day, as opposed to
instead
just
of like 15 minute staggers, have it more like every hour and a half, 2 hours, or something like that, depending on.
I think like every half hour, so that you by the time you can still switch between all the you can still switch between all the games if you want to, as opposed to to the average Saturday night where they all start at the same time, and then you want to switch to the other game, but it's also on intermission.
Yeah, and my dad actually just chimed in with a noteworthy comment in the sense of like maybe throw a game in a non-traditional hockey market, or at least non-traditional NHL market in a place like maybe Halifax. Yeah, I think that would be a cool idea too.
I think Halifax, more neutral site games during that would be actually fantastic.
Like that junior, I'm pretty sure it was World Juniors that happened in Halifax and Moncton, right? And that crowd was fantastic. Imagine them at a regular season NHL game. They'd lose their damn minds.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Especially if it's like a Pittsburgh versus Colorado and you have Sid versus Nathan. 2 East Coasters. Whew.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. All right, so we're getting close to Chris's cutoff time here because he's got some other things to do here. So I don't think there's anything else that we need to get into. Just one quick note: it sounds like Hockey Canada has come to the end of their investigation into the World Junior incident. Was it the
2018 World Junior team?
The 2018 World Junior.
I believe incident? That happened in London.
Yeah. But they haven't released the results because there is an appeal process that's going through. And once that comes all out, I think that's when we can really dive into it. That's
when players will be starting to be named as far as guilty parties, and yeah.
So, and I also do want to just throw out there that Brock McGillis is doing a 100 teams in 100 days tour through the 7 NHL cities to talk about inclusion, and more specifically about the LGBTQ communities and inclusion within the hockey the hockey culture and hockey environment.
Doing the good work that the NHL is not willing to do.
I mean, yes and no. Yes and no. I think you need someone like him to do this outside the NHL, because what he's doing, he's going and talking with kids. So that they can help with that, right? And I don't think this whole thing is. I would love to see the NHL drive the bus on this, but you need more than that, right?
And I give full props to Brock for being that trailblazer too. Like you said, he's very much needed in that sense. I agree with that. I guess I just maybe had higher hopes for. Like, it seemed like the NHL was making steps in the right direction over the past decade, and then to have their decisions that they've made this past offseason, it just felt like not only a slap to the face of a section of their fan base, but also just a step backwards, regressing as far as being more inclusive and having people that not necessarily are your traditional hockey fans embracing hockey culture.
Yeah, well, the thing with it is hockey culture needs to improve and outside of the NHL, because hockey's much fucking bigger than the NHL.
True.
The NHL may be the biggest, the most prominent league, but it's so much bigger than the NHL, and we need to remember that. So yes, big shout out to Brock McGillis for doing that. Please go listen to, if you're interested in this, I strongly suggest to go listen to his interview with Jeff Merrick on the Jeff Merrick Show earlier today on Tuesday, November 14th. So please go listen to that if you're interested in that, because I think he touched on a lot of different things in there that he does a much better job at talking about than I would ever do. But moving on, one last question. I'm going to go back to the Oilers, and with the coaching changes that they've made, the firing of Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson, and the hiring of Chris Knobloch and Paul Coffey, do you think that the Oilers can claw their way back into the playoffs by the end of the season?
Only because they have two essentially generational talents. If they can find a reasonable amount of sustained success with the new coach bump, whatever you want to call it, to the point where they can actually get a decent amount of momentum, they might be able to get into a wild card just based off of the talent of 29 and 97. But would I put money on it? Probably not.
They are currently 6 points out of the second wild card spot, which is currently held by St. Louis. They would have to leap. They would have to jump over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams to make that happen. I think they'll be right in there to the bitter end if they don't do it. If any team's going to do it, it's them.
Yeah, that's kind of the thought that I was having. Like, if there was a team in the NHL that could potentially do that, it's probably the Oilers, just based off of those two players that I talked about.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll be a top 3 team in the Pacific at this point unless one of Vegas, Vancouver, or LA take an absolute nosedive. The Oilers currently have 9 points in 14 games. LA's got 19, so they've got a 10. They'd have to catch 10 points, which is a lot, and a lot of teams. You've got
it's still decently early in the season, but your point still stands. So that's a sizable gap they'd have to fill.
And then the Canucks have 23 points, so they got a 14-point lead on the Oilers, and the Vegas Golden Knights have a 16-point lead on the Oilers. I just don't see that happening for the top 3. It's I think at this point, if they can get into a wild card spot, that's going to be huge for them. And if they do, watch out. I'm gonna just say I think they fall short. I think that I think there's more issues in this on that team than the coaching, which I don't think really was an issue. The goaltending's huge for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if anything,
if they have,
the goaltending will ruin a good coach, which I think is a decent chunk of what happened there. So the fact that they haven't had a major change to the goal, they sent Campbell down and they brought up
Cal Pickard.
Yeah, Pickard. They brought up Pickard, but I don't think Pickard is going to be the 2023 Jordan Binnington.
That's the thing, is that unless one of their goalies just figures out how to be Binnington, or they acquire
person you want to use,
or they acquire a goaltender, and there has been rumors that they are actually in on said Binnington. I just don't. I see them struggling to outscore their problems.
Also, just a quick aside, if you haven't seen the Steve Dangle clip of him talking about the chance of Binnington going to the Edmonton Oilers, do yourself a favor and watch it, because you will laugh.
Jordan Binnington with the Edmonton Oilers media would be fantastic theater.
It would be fucking great, and we needed to drop an F-bomb on this episode.
So, I'll say they fall short just because of the goaltending. Because I just am not sold on Skinner. Jack Campbell's a shell of the goalie he was when he was in Toronto. And I don't think Calvin Pickard's the answer. And I don't know if they'll, unless this is truly now transitioning over to Jeff Jackson's team and he makes a big move and a bold move and acquires a goaltender.
They're too cap strapped for something that big and bold in my mind. But yeah,
they would have to cannibalize they'd have to cannibalize their roster in another way to do it.
You'd have to give up a Nuge or something substantial. Yeah.
But even then, if you do that, you get the goaltending, you still have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I mean, I think they need to try something, right? So, but under current construction, I still think that they fall short because I just do not have faith in that goaltending.
Yeah. They might get it close, but ultimately I still think they face plant at the finish line.
Yeah. All right. That'll be everything for this episode. We will be back next week, earlier in the week as usual. I haven't looked at the Canucks schedule. One of the reasons we did tonight on a Tuesday, and unfortunately weren't able to get Tyler on, was because of the Canucks schedule with the return of Bo Horvat tomorrow and the game on Thursday. So we'll be back next week with some more Canucks talk. Kevin will be back on, I believe, Thursday. I believe in the afternoon at some point to talk Flames. If not, it'll be on the weekend. I do appreciate everyone tuning in and putting up with us in our lack of a hard schedule. But how do we follow you there, Chris?
I'm on most social media at SCHNEIDZ.
I am Bearded Connect 03 on the social medias. You can follow Kevin at KEVOLE. Tyler is on the X app at TNoble, TNOBLE. You can follow Devin at Gordhouse09 on the X app. You can follow us on that damn X app, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch at Shifts and Pucks. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will catch you later. Bye for now.